We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Hey, warmer friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined for a two-part conversation by our guy, Rocco Miller. He does such amazing work over at Bracketeer.org, and he also does a great job over at Basket Under Review. He also does a very stellar job in terms of taking a look at this great game of college basketball over at the Field of 68 as well, and we're going to chat it up with him about what we're all seeing with these mid-major conferences. Are there any sort of roster moves that we need to be taking note of? Are we going to be seeing some more international guys signing? We'll talk about that in the first part, and then I know that there are a few new conferences in the United Conference along with the Pac-12 that he's going to be highlighting, and I need to get his thoughts on Minnesota. We were talking with Brian Butch, who does great work over at the Big Ten Network, in the conversation that we had yesterday, and he seems to be relatively high on them. I know that Rocco, he got a good, just upfront view of him over at Colorado State, so we're going to be chatting about that team and so much more. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we will fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And per usual, I beg with you, I plead with you, please do send in those Twitter/X questions because it makes this offseason go by a little bit faster and allows me to know what you're all looking for on this podcast as well. So I usually appreciate when you give me a little bit of just what you want to be hearing there, and what you do want to be hearing, I know, is some great guest interviews. And keep in mind, you're going to be getting a conference preview podcast for all 32 conferences. We're through 3. We're going to be getting you guys the Big South here in the next few days. I plan on doing the Big West in a few days as well. So those are on tap for, I would say, within the next 7 or so days. So we'll be mindful of that, and certainly going to talk a little Big West and so much more with this man, Rocco Miller, who you're able to follow on the old Twitter/X at his first name, Rocco, last name Miller, and then the number 8 all together. And Rocco, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Greg. Good to be back with you. Here we are, late June, man. Can you believe it?
Absolutely. And happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And it is late June, so now we've got the rosters all set. And first things first, from a roster perspective, is there anything that you're looking at right now? Because for the most part, the hay is in the barn, but we have seen South Carolina add a few international guys. It feels like a lot of teams, they've got like 1 or 2 roster spots, and I've been noticing a few junior college players coming off the board to be able to take some of those spots as well that might have fallen through the cracks.
Yeah, nothing I have directly on my radar at this point. I just think there are some teams that are trying their darndest to not reveal who's actually on their roster. This is more mid-major and low-major talk. But, I know that Southern Miss recently it came out with Isaac Tavares returning to school. That was one I don't think Southern Miss wanted to get out there because they're not done with their schedule yet, and it impacts scheduling in a big way. That's where I do have boots to the ground knowledge on a day-to-day basis where you are going to quickly scare away some opponents if you have a big returnee coming back. And I think that's where you might see a few more names like Tavares pop up as we get through the summer. Outside of that, if you have an international edition, I'm sure we're going to continue to see those come in one at a time like they have been the last several weeks. But I don't really put a ton of stock into those guys until they've proven it in college basketball. I think over the last several years, even in this recent era where NIL payments can get guys from top European or overseas leagues to join college basketball. I think a good majority of them need that 1 year of seasoning to get tougher, to learn how the game's officiated, to really get comfortable, to take on a large role. You might see some guys come in and do some special type role, like whether it's rebounding, whether it's pick and pop stuff, whether it's a 3-point assassin, late in game situations. Those things I can certainly see coming with a lot of these examples in the high majors. But to ask a guy to come over from overseas, learn college basketball in just a few months and be an all conference type player or be a projected leader of a team is just way too much. History and data do not support that as being much of a realistic possibility. So we know who some of the superstars are coming in. We've known that for a while. We know all the things LSU's trying to pull off, at least a lot of the things. But besides that, I mean, it's just going to be an evolution. You know, you got to that's what I'm excited about, the early November window for, see these teams get their first couple of games under their belts, see how guys are going to be used. I think we saw it last year, you know, where some of the players coming overseas, their first taste, by the time we got to conference play, they would see their minutes diminish in certain ways. And it would go the other way too. If they were benched for the first part of the year and they finally started to sort things out and crack the rotation and earn more minutes, and they would. Now, obviously in the mid-major level and below, there might not be much of an option, right? I think these high major rosters are loaded. Some of them 12 to 15 players deep. So you really got nothing to lose by adding a couple more in case one of them is really an upside guy, which most of these guys are upside guys. But in the mid-major and low-major, if you take one of these guys, you're kind of stuck playing them. You know, you got to give them their 20 minutes a game and justify whatever it took to get them in. So it's quite fascinating, just depending on the type of team you're asking about and what kind of player it is.
And I'm so glad that you're talking about just the sort of type of team that it is and whatnot, because I've been talking about this on the podcast over the last few weeks, as we've got Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at bracketteer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. If I had to award one conference, the most improved conference of the shall we say, off-season award, I'm going with the Big East, because obviously we know that St. John's and UConn are going to be there, but it was St. John's. There was a little bit of question mark before they signed Tonde Yusufu. That's big for them, but likes of DePaul, Marquette being able to step up, really revamp the roster, Providence, Xavier. I love what they've been able to do there, but I want to get your thoughts on this. Who would you say is perhaps the conference that maybe upgraded the most from where they were the previous season? Because no doubt about it, I would say if you had like the best overall off-season, I'd be going with a conference like the SEC because they're going to be totally loaded. But from one year to the next, I think the Big East has improved themselves the most out of all these conferences.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, you could definitely make that case. I like the depth in the Big East quite a bit better. You know, I think when we got into the guts of the season last year, the Big East was rolling with 3 teams in the tournament, and slowly Seton Hall faded out after an amazing November, playing really well in Maui, memorably, of course, falling short in that USC game, and ultimately not being much of a tournament possibility by March. The rest of the league was just so down. So if you're just going from last year to this year, kind of some low-hanging fruit for you, Greg, because the Big East historically hasn't been that bad. I think, you know, you look at the year, 2 years before that, when they only got 3 bids that year, they actually had, you know, 3 other teams right on the bubble, whether you look at Seton Hall, St. John's, or Providence, and all 3 of them missed out on the field. But this last year, you know, it was basically all 8 teams were pretty clearly out of the field. So they're coming off their worst year in recent memory. So they should be back to about what we'd expect from the Big East, but still no guarantees. Like, I love the upside in Providence. I certainly think DePaul's much improved and they can be a real threat. You know, Creighton with Alan Huss taking over, I think can be a lot more exciting and versatile and get some fresh juice in there to come, you know, snap their, I think it was 10-year run of going into 10 straight tournaments last year. So Marquette, I agree, is much improved. Xavier will be better. There's no doubt. And then I think the mysteries are at Georgetown and Butler and whatever Seton Hall has left to offer as well. So those 3 at the bottom will help determine where we snap the chalk for this league. And it's a rising tides lifts all boats scenario with each of these conferences. So, you know, with that being said, I like what the American Conference is doing right now in terms of Wichita State just being completely re-racked with 10 of their top 12. I think it is almost all their top 10 players, especially the ones that had eligibility, back in the fold, and now the Patrick Starling in the top 65 entering the season. But, you know, South Florida's got a lot of talent. Memphis, they're on the prowl to get back to where they think they should be. Tulsa shouldn't have too much drop-off. And I actually think this team at Charlotte under Wes Miller is going to be really, really good. I thought they did an amazing job building that roster together and getting so many pieces, both with the coaching staff and a couple pieces from Cincinnati. You know, last year at Cincinnati, they had an unfortunate first couple of months. Taking that Eastern Michigan loss really, really killed the Bearcats' profile early, and they were so far out of it that even a road win at Allen Fieldhouse, which nobody wins there, by 16 points, and a couple other huge wins at the top of the Big 12 were not nearly enough to get Cincinnati back into the tournament. So now they get fired, but they take a lot of the same types of players, the same coaching staff for the most part, and they get to do it in the American Conference. I think that's a team with a ton of upside. I think UAB will be rock solid. I think FAU has a lot of talent. I'm more like somewhat hopeful that the entire Americans are on the rise up. Still pretty concerned at places like East Carolina and Rice and UTSA, but I think the top 9 or 10 should be solid there. And then if you want to go a little bit lower, Greg, I have a ton of faith that the Ivy League will return to the top 11. They finished 14th last year, so not a major drop off by any means, but I think you're looking at year 2 of Fran McCaffrey, and year 1, he won the dang Ivy Madness. What's he got in store for an encore? They got their resources in order quickly at Penn and got a lot of top guys back. Yale, even though they graduated a lot of guys, they're going to be right there and expect to win the title again in the regular season. I think Kevin Hovde at Columbia learned a lot of valuable lessons last year, and they also took a step forward as a program. Now his second year promises to be stronger. And the teams that not enough people are talking about are Princeton and Harvard. Princeton, first time in Coach Henderson's career last year where they didn't have a senior at all. And now they're going to have several seniors. They took their lumps last year. They have basically an entire lineup of experience. You look at Torvik right now, the RPMS, returning player minutes is what RPMS stands for, 100% for the Princeton Tigers, number 1 in the country. So I expect Princeton to be back where they once were, what we got used to them being. And Harvard, they project as the best team talent-wise. No, maybe not talent-wise per se, total, but they have enough combination of talent and returning minutes that Torvik's got them winning the league. So you got 5 really strong teams. Cornell has their really interesting frenetic style that throws people fits with offense. I think Brown will be just as solid as they were last year and be right in there with Cornell and Columbia and possibly Harvard. We'll see how it shakes out for the 4th and most important spot to get into Ivy Madness. And then Dartmouth with their new coach, Brett McConnell. Certainly the penciled in number 8 team this year, but that guy is a really sharp analytical brain. I got to know him during his time at Stanford. He's been a sharp assistant coach at several places, including Princeton. So he knows the Ivy League really well. I just think they're going to be a player short this year at Dartmouth, but watch out for the Big Green long term.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I've liked what I've seen out of the Big Green over the last few seasons, and for Princeton, you mentioned it. They've got some of the most roster retention in all of college basketball as well, and on the other side, I do want to dive into that with Rocco a little bit more. Talk about some of these teams that they are retaining a lot of guys from the previous year, how much that's going to be able to lift them up, especially some of these mid-major teams. I'm going to bring up Cal Poly. We're going to be taking a look at the newer conferences of the Pac-12 and the United Conference, and have to bring up a team in the power ranks in Minnesota that has a lot of roster retention. That's on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast Family Podcast.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rocco Miller. He does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Follow him on the old Twitter side, checks at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, the number 8 altogether. Also does great work over at Basket Under Review and the Field of 68. And Rocco, we left off talking about a lot of roster retention, mainly the Ivy League, especially with Princeton bringing back darn near everyone from last year. And I want to expand upon that a little bit further. How much do you think those sorts of teams get slept upon? Because I remember I was talking so much about this with Navy last year. Obviously, they fell short in terms of making the NCAA tournament, but they were a great team on the betting side of things. They were a great story out there in the Patriot League because they were number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of returning minutes. Princeton is obviously one of those teams that's going to be right up there at the top. And then I do think that's going to be interesting to take a look at some of these other teams, because when you talk about Florida and why we love them so much, they're among the power conference teams towards the top. But another team like a Cal Poly really catches my attention for those of us guys out west. And I think that they're a team that is really being slept upon with the new look Big West.
Yeah, I love the new look Big West. We've talked about that on some of the previous shows throughout the spring, Greg, where Cal Poly with Mike DeGeorge and that style of play, it's just going to continue to work. I foresee them getting above 20 wins this year. How far up the standings will be dependent upon how many stops they can get. They're going to score the ball at will. I think Cal State Fullerton's going to carry forward what they built last year, getting their stud freshman Christian Williams, a kid that's just got all sorts of potential. He was a 4-star recruit out of Southern California. Really big deal for the Cal State Fullerton to get him out of high school and try to recover that program. And of course, they finished in the top 3 last year, which was unbelievable. And then you look at Andy Newman at Cal State Northridge. I think I bring him up almost every show. Just a genius coach. He's done another great job in the portal. They'll be really tough as well. And then Irvine, Santa Barbara, UC San Diego. Those 3 schools have ingrained resources. And if it's UC Irvine, obviously the best coach in the league. I don't think that's debatable. Russell Turner right now has proven that. And, we'll see Cal Baptist come in under Kyle Getter. I think they're a little strapped financially right now for basketball, but they have a great home court advantage. I don't know if they ever lost a game at home last year. I'm almost sure they didn't. So it'll be really tough for these Big West teams, even though they're more regional, to go in there and win. They have a nice home court advantage that they do a great job with at Cal Baptist. And same goes for the Utah Valley Wolverine. Who's going to go into Utah Valley and win? That's going to be the big question. It might be a safe bet to say that they go undefeated at home in conference. And then it comes down to what can Utah Valley do while they're in California for all their road games, because the rest of the conference is there. And like we talked about last time, Sacramento State certainly has a lot to prove from an X's and O's and coaching standpoint under Mike Bibby, but the horses are in place. And that gives them a fighting chance on every night. They played really well at the Beehive last year. That's another team where road wins are just going to be so difficult in this league. Like, you look at those 3 examples from the 3 new schools, those are home court heroes in all 3 cases. So it'll be fascinating. And I think Sacramento State's a little bit on an island as well. With UC Davis moving up to the Mountain West, you have Sacramento State as the only team in the northern part of the state. So it will be a trip for everybody else to go there. So I'm fascinated by the Big West. I also am fascinated, Greg, by the 2 new conferences, if you will. I guess we'll start with the United Conference. I think Central Arkansas, with their style of play and everything they achieved last year and enough pieces coming back, they project to be a really good team. I think they can finish in the top 150, which for that league might be good enough to get it done. I also think Tarleton is probably the best resource school in the conference. They get a new coach with Eric Hout, who's a tremendous defensive brain. Look at Tarleton's matchup zone that they'll come out with in the first couple months. That will certainly wreak some havoc on these new opponents that haven't coached against Eric in the past. He, of course, comes from Utah State. I like what Arlington is building under KT Turner, certainly some talent there. Little Rock under Travis Ford is a team with a bunch of resources all of a sudden. And I've talked to everybody in the league already in the new United, just trying to get as familiar as I can. There's a lot of fear on what Little Rock can put out there this year. So although Torvik's only got them 277, I would say they're certainly spending like a top 200 or maybe top 150 team. We'll see what that balance shakes out to be later. I also believe Austin P has a lot back, a good amount of talent. Like Torvik says, Austin P has the most talent in the league. We'll see how that plays out. So that's my quick thoughts on the United. And then on the Pac-12, that's the other new league. Obviously, it'll be big time basketball with Gonzaga being a blue blood in all of college basketball. The amount of money that Utah State is spending in hiring Ben Jacobson and keeping Mason around again is just unbelievable. That's going to be a really sharp team. Colorado State is a team I'm very high on. 6 of their top 7 return to Fort Collins. That should be an improved team and a tough road trip as always for the visiting teams. Oregon State with the hiring of Joyner should be phenomenal. If it all goes well in Corvallis, they could actually be a bubble team, Greg. I really believe that. And San Diego State, of course, looking to get back to their normal self, trying to figure out their rebounding issues the last couple of years. And now with Magoon Gwath out of there, I think there's an opportunity to kind of reinvent that old Aztec brand. I look at those 5 as an awesome potential top 5. You throw Boise in there, basically projects similar to Oregon State right now. And of course, it won't be easy to win in Boise. You got a strong top 6. Texas State joins the league with DJ Hall returning. That's a Power 5 player, DJ Hall, the Sun Belt Freshman of the Year. And so Texas State, I believe, being able to build a team around them and to be so secluded geographically, that should be a tough place to win San Marcos all year long for all these teams. And then we'll see if they can pick up some road wins. Fresno State's a little bit improved. And Washington State, I think, still has some hope with David Riley. You know, he's a great young coach. He's still figuring things out, trying to figure out some defense up there at Washington State. But there's really no holes in the league on paper going into the season. And it should make for a really, really awesome opportunity for this league to multiply bids, possibly get up to 4 or 5 bids by the time March rolls around. I truly believe that.
And among those teams that you mentioned, Colorado State returning so much, I think it's such a great segue because I want to get your thoughts on one power conference team that I feel like is hiding out there in plain sight right now. That would be Nico Medved's Minnesota Golden Gophers. I thought that he did more with less last season, and I take a look at him this year. He's got over 50% of the scores back from a year ago. Sure, maybe you lose a few of the ancillary pieces from a year ago, but I want to get your thoughts on Minnesota because I think we can agree that they're not on par with the Michigan schools or Illinois, but I think this really can be a team out there in the Big Ten that could be able to vie for an NCAA tournament spot, and I think that a lot of people are underrating them and just don't understand quite how great of a coach Nico Medved is.
Nah, he's a great coach, and he's got an awesome offensive system that, still at Colorado State under Ali Frukmanesh, they're continuing to play at Fort Collins. He had that big of an influence on that program and on Ali and the remaining staff down at Fort Collins. And Minnesota last year was a learning year, and they kind of overachieved a little bit. They took out some teams that maybe some folks didn't think they would have the talent to do, but he really unlocked Cade Tyson to be the best version of himself. They dealt with a tough injury to Jalen Crocker-Johnson, and Crocker-Johnson's now full strength. So bringing him back with Bobby Durkin and Isaac Asuma, they have 3 double-digit Big Ten scorers back. That's going to be hard to find anywhere else. And you add in Kyan Evans from North Carolina, a guy who got to play quite a bit for UNC, again, following that same, at least that blueprint path, totally different player, of course, than Cade Tyson, but going from Chapel Hill up to Minneapolis should be interesting. And then you look at Malachi Palmer coming in, played quite a bit for Villanova, a couple of reserves from Michigan and Malik Cordell and Winters Grady. And then, of course, a young sophomore coming over from Texas Tech. The 5 transfers Minnesota took are from UNC, Villanova, 2 from Michigan, and Texas Tech. All those guys were around winning cultures, saw their teams, even if they weren't a huge part of those teams, they were around daily last season to see what winning looks like, winning habits look like. I think all that will be a really huge piece as long as they get all these guys to get along together. I trust Nico and that staff. I know a lot of those guys very well to preach really good habits, to take on good characters from the portal. So I imagine these guys are all great characters, and that it will go a long ways in terms of chemistry and cohesion, making sure Crocker Johnson, Durkin, Asuma, and Evans get theirs, but then also finding ways to leverage these chess pieces. Malik Cordell 7-2. That could be huge when, Minnesota goes up against the big boys in the league, whether it's Wisconsin or Illinois or Michigan State. So I really think Minnesota's got the goods to get to the big dance. And now I think it's more than that for them. They've done a great job schedule-wise. They just got a series with SMU. We announced earlier that they're playing Cal in the Pentagon. They've got 7 really good games on that schedule, including one of the ESPN events. And that should be plenty enough when you play all these 20 Big Ten games plus the Big Ten tournament. Now you just got to go out and win like 9 or 10 of those games, and you'll see the Gophers dancing. I truly expect that this year.
Yep, I do as well. I'm very high on Minnesota coming into the season. We've got a lot that has happened here in the college basketball offseason. And Rocco, you're doing a great job with regards to tying a bow around all of it with the schedules that are starting to come out. You're doing a great job helping out these teams to be able to navigate this offseason, be able to put themselves in a nice position to be able to pick up some quality wins, help their programs in the best way humanly possible. And you guys over there at bracketeer.org do such an amazing job. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Scheduling. That's all
Yes.
we do around here, Greg. Day after day after day. It's a rewarding exercise. Although I'm juggling all sorts of teams and dates and matchups and skill levels and budgets to try to play matchmaker, there's a lot of great information that comes through during those discussions about the upcoming season. A lot of what we just talked about. So much of what I'm able to share on your program, Greg, is coming directly from the teams. So I don't have a lot of time to read, mock drafts or anybody's great work that they're doing out there, unfortunately. But the good news is I am spending that time that I would otherwise be spending reading other folks out there and their thoughts on all of this by just talking directly to the teams this time of year. So I find it to be so rewarding and a big part of why I got involved in this so long ago. That's the key. And I think from a public facing perspective, bracketeer.org will continue to roll out a new page each week with a different conference. The SEC will be out in the next couple of days. Keep your eyes on that. If you missed the Big Ten release, go back and find that. That's live on the site. Any of the Big Ten schedules that you're curious about. And now the SEC will be next. We'll have the Big 12 in about a week. But that's just a great way to keep up on a daily basis. We're constantly updating it in real time. So again, from the time the Big Ten got released on our site about a week ago today, there's a lot more information than just a week ago. And we'll keep doing that throughout the summer. By the time we get to September, you'll see about the top 15 leagues or so live and on the site, help you get prepared for the season, help you get a better understanding of how these schedules were built, and help you get an understanding on the future for these teams. A lot of multi-year series, a lot of ideas in place for next year that we're adding as nuggets at the bottom that you just won't find anywhere else. If you appreciate that work, that's obviously the core of what we do in the offseason. We appreciate any support you can help us with to keep us going. There's a support button there on the top right corner of the website. Anything you're able to donate, we really appreciate it, and we'll keep it rolling. That's the core right now. As we get closer to the season, there'll be more with Field of 68, Basket Under Review, and other sources. But for now, it's schedule.
Yes, sir. And they are doing an amazing job over there at bracketeer.org. And you know that they're trusted because a lot of these teams, they do not trust just anyone with this information. They do so because they know that Rocco is a very, very trustworthy guy and that he's going to do them right. And with Rocco, he's helping these teams out in terms of being able to assemble those schedules as well. So a big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry CM, the email does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And conference preview podcasts are coming for all 32 conferences. We're through a few already. You could expect a few more here in the next few days, and we're going to chew our way through them. As I always like to say, here in the offseason, I'd like to average one every 5 or so days, and we're currently on track for that, so feeling very good there. And then with regards to the news and notes in college basketball, we're going to keep them going. Transfer portal's relatively dead, so expect great guest interviews all throughout the offseason, and I'm looking to build to make this a greatest college basketball season ever. And once we get back in season, fix an analysis on every single game, every single day. So I appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.